to give you has resulted in millions of dollars of research funding for my clients, so pay attention. I'm Sarah Dobson. I am a research grant consultant, and I help early career researchers get funded at NIH. And so when we're talking about grant planning, how you schedule your time to be able to get one of these grants out the door, there are two things that you can do that are going to make the biggest difference, that are actually going to get you across that pay line and get you the NIH funding that you're looking for. Those two things are, number one, getting very clear on the overall concept of your research idea. And number two is giving yourself enough time to write a really good grant. So let me talk about each one of those. So number one, when we're talking about getting solid on your concept, on your research idea, that's really about making sure that you are being as efficient as possible in how you're actually writing your full application. You want to make sure that conceptually you're on solid ground before you actually go and write your full application. Because what happens when you're not on solid ground conceptually is that you start writing your full application and you realize partway through that you are going in the wrong direction and your study design maybe doesn't make sense, or you don't have a really solid conceptual framework for what you're doing, or the scientific premise of what you're doing is kind of weak. So if you establish that at the outset and you go into writing your full application with a lot of confidence, that is going to save you a lot of time in the long run, essentially. It's going to make sure that when you actually sit down to write your full application, that you're basing it off a blueprint that is really good, that it's going to get you where you want to go, right? And so one of the keys here is to get feedback early on in the process. And it's important to consider this in the planning of your grant writing, because what happens a lot of times is you just start writing when you're ready and you don't get feedback until very late in the process, if at all. And by that point, it's too late, right? So when we're talking about solidifying the concept of your application, we're talking about making sure that you yourself are clear on that first, and also that you're getting feedback from colleagues, from mentors, from others around the concept of what you're doing. Does it make sense to them? Is it scientifically sound? Is it aligned with the mission and priorities of your target funding institute or center, right? Those are the types of things that you need to establish really early on if you want to give your application the best possible chance of getting funded. These are strategic moves that you're making to position yourself for success. Let's talk about number two, giving yourself enough time. Almost everyone that I have ever worked with has underestimated the amount of time it takes to write a really good grant. And this is, of course, totally understandable. It's totally normal, because you observe around you people who are churning out applications at a pretty rapid pace. And you, of course, have a bunch of other things on your plate aside from just writing this grant proposal, right? But here's what I want you to think about. Number one, those people around you who are churning out grants all the time are very likely further ahead in their careers than you are. So they have a little bit more, first of all, experience writing grants. And second of all, they have a lot more material that they can use to put things together rather quickly. But if you are more sort of junior in your career and you're just starting out, it's a lot trickier to put all of that together really quickly. Writing a really strong, fundable grant application requires a lot of deep thinking. And deep thinking requires time and space, right? Especially early on when you're really not just figuring out each one of the grants that you are writing, you're also really shaping your program of research, right? And if you kind of skip over that or rush through it, or don't give yourself enough time to do that well, it's going to have consequences in the success of your grants and the number of attempts it's going to take to get those grants funded, right? So if you can slow down, if you can give yourself a lot more time and space to think really deeply about what you're doing, it's going to get you better outcomes. It's actually going to help you get there faster than if you just try to churn things out and kind of mimic all the people around you who, like I said, are probably further along in their careers than you. So let's recap. Number one, when it comes to $1 million grant writing advice, when it comes to planning your grant applications for success, the very first thing that is going to help you write a fundable grant is giving yourself enough time to do it well, right? And number two is conceptualizing your project before you actually write the whole thing, getting really clear on that concept before you write the full grant. So if you found this helpful, if you want more support writing your NIH grants, we have a free resource library that is full of frameworks and tutorials and other tools that can help you get there. So if you want to sign up for that, it's totally free. You can do that in the video description. I'll see you next time.